Algorithmic recommendation versus humanistic curation. Why you hate everything now. Part 1. The enclosure movement and the birth of modern alienation. Our story begins in 16th century England with the Enclosure Acts, a series of laws that privatized common lands, displacing peasants and forcing them into wage labor. This marked the beginning of capitalist modernity, a shift from communal, agrarian life to industrialized, individualized existence. The Enclosure Acts of the 16th to 19th centuries were not merely land reforms, they were the first large-scale experiment in social engineering for capital. Key concepts: atomization. The destruction of communal landholding fractured social bonds, turning people into isolated economic units. Alienation, first posited by Marx, workers became estranged from their labor, their products, and each other, reduced to cogs in a profit-driven machine. By privatizing common lands, the aristocracy displaced peasants, creating 1. A landless proletariat forced into wage labor, driven by Marx's primitive accumulation. 2. The breakdown of communal life, replacing mutual aid with competitive individualism. Case study: the Highland Clearances, Scotland, 18th to 19th century. Landlords evicted tenant farmers to make way for sheep, more profitable than subsistence farming. This mirrors modern gig economy precarity. Uber drivers, like displaced peasants, have no stake in the system but are forced to participate. Link to atomization. Ferdinand Tönnies, Gemeinschaft versus Gesellschaft, transition from village life, organic bonds, to urban anonymity, contractual relations. Emile Durkheim's Anomie. Normlessness in industrial society, where old values collapse without replacement. Part 2. The Enlightenment's double-edged sword. While rationalism and individualism promised liberation, they also dissolved traditional structures of meaning, leaving people adrift in a disenchanted world. This process didn't stop with industrialization, it evolved. By the 20th century, the Frankfurt School, Adorno, Horkheimer, Marcuse, would argue that capitalism had not just reshaped labor but consciousness itself. The Enlightenment's philosophical and functional paradoxes are exemplified by 1. Liberation versus disenchantment, illustrated by Max and Weber. Reason dismantled superstition but also dissolved shared meaning, leaving a vacuum filled by consumerism. 2. The rise of the quantified self. Enlightenment rationality mutates into modern self-tracking Fitbit, productivity apps, reducing human experience to data. Part 3. The House of the Intellect versus the Culture Industry. In The House of Intellect, 1959, Jacques Barzun warned that specialization and anti-intellectualism were eroding deep, reflective thought and by extension, public discourse. The Frankfurt School took this further in their critique of culture industry. Adorno and Horkheimer note that mass media doesn't just entertain, it standardizes desire, replacing authentic culture with prefabricated experiences. Pseudo-individualization. You think you're choosing, but your tastes are pre-shaped by market logic. A modern example of this is Spotify's Discover Weekly, gives the illusion of personal taste, but its recommendations are based on aggregate data clusters. Fast forward to the digital age where algorithmic recommendation engines, YouTube, TikTok, Spotify emerge and are emblematic of the culture industry 2.0. They don't just suggest content, they manufacture your preferences. Adorno and Horkheimer's critique notes how the culture industry, through standardization of Hollywood films, pop music, and now TikTok trends, follow formulaic patterns to minimize risk. Case study. The millennial whoop. The same melodic hook, for instance, Hey Ya. By Outkast. Let It Go from Frozen appears across pop songs because algorithms favor predictable dopamine triggers. The death of the public intellectual. In the past world of pre-digital curation, figures like Susan Sontag or Lester Bangs shaped taste through essays and criticism. However, in the present world of post-digital flattening, algorithms privilege engagement over depth, for instance, YouTube's controversial recommendations boosting Jordan Peterson videos. Case study. The decline of music criticism. In the 1990s, Pitchfork could break indie bands with a single review. Today, Spotify's algorithmic playlists wrap caviar, today's top hits, dictate success, favoring tracks with streamability, repetitive hooks, short intros. Part 4. Neoliberalism, fascism, and the death of empathy. Both neoliberalism and fascism thrive on cold reason stripped of human connection, replacing human empathy with instrumental logic. Neoliberalism, proposed and championed by Hayek and Friedman, reduces all human interaction to market transactions. Social media platforms commodify attention, turning friendships into engagement metrics. Fascism's aestheticized politics, exemplified by Walter Benjamin, shows how it uses emotional spectacle to mask its inhumanity. Today, rage bait and outrage algorithms simulate political engagement while preventing real solidarity. 1. Neoliberalism's market fundamentalism. Hayek's The Road to Serfdom argued centralized planning leads to tyranny, but neoliberal deregulation created new tyrannies, for instance, gig workers with no labor rights. Case study. Amazon's Mechanical Turk. Workers paid pennies for microtasks, managed by AI, a literal proletarianization of clickwork. 2. Social media as a neoliberal marketplace. Instagram's authenticity paradox. Users perform realness while conforming to algorithmic beauty standards, for instance, the Instagram face syndrome, fillers, filters, and faux freckles. 3. Fascism's aestheticized politics, Walter Benjamin. The alt-right's meme war. Irony and absurdism, Pepe Groyper. Aesthetics mask reactionary politics, making extremism palatable. Case study. During the 2016 election, 4chan's message boards used irony to spread white nationalist slogans, Kekistan, bypassing traditional censorship. 4. Algorithmic radicalization. YouTube's recommendation engine famously pushed users from mild conservatism to far-right content, as documented by The Wall Street Journal and Guardian. 5. The erasure of empathy. Herbert Marcuse's One-Dimensional Man. Late capitalism reduces all values to exchange value, including human relationships, for instance, dating apps gamifying intimacy via swipes. TikTok's trauma content. Viral trends like autism checklists or dissociation challenges turn mental illness into consumable content, stripping it of lived gravity. Part 5. The digital landscape. How recommendation engines enforce alienation. Social media platforms are the new enclosures, privatizing attention and sociality, which they achieve through a number of strategies. 1. The filter bubble, Eli Pariser. Algorithms lock you into ideological silos, making dissent invisible. Case study. Facebook's 2012 Emotional Contagion study. By manipulating feeds, Facebook proved it could amplify negative emotions, yet kept using engagement optimizing algorithms. Google search personalization. Two people searching climate change get different results. One sees NASA data, the other Breitbart conspiracy theories. 2. The attention economy's psychological toll. Platforms optimize for addiction, not meaning. Slot machine. Design Tristan Harris, infinite scroll, variable rewards, likes, replies, exploit dopamine loops. Case study. Twitter's quote tweet, rage bait, posts with divisive takes, for instance, hot take, Inception is overrated, are amplified because conflict drives engagement. 3. The death of subculture, Mark Fisher. Niche scenes, punk, indie film, zines die when algorithms flatten taste into data points. Pre-internet, punk scenes required physical presence, shows, zines. Now, algorithmic platforms homogenize dissent, for example, alt aesthetics commodified into shine fashion trends. Case study. Spotify's loudness war. To grab attention in auto playlists, songs are compressed to be louder, sacrificing dynamic range. This mirrors how online discourse escalates to extremes to cut through the noise. Part 6. Conclusion. The result of all this. You hate everything now, because algorithms feed you content that maximizes negative engagement, anger, fear, disgust. Human curation, librarians, critics, subcultures, is replaced by automated homogeneity. Real community is replaced by performative individualism, Instagram activism, viral slacktivism. So what does this all mean? Can we recover humanistic curation? Yes, by forming a resistance rooted in reclaiming humanistic curation. Alternatives exist, but they require deliberate rejection of convenience, for instance. Small-scale moderation. Case study. The Fediverse Mastodon. Pixel decentralized platforms allow community-specific norms, with no ads, no algorithms. Library socialism. Kropotkin, public libraries as a model for non-commercial knowledge sharing, e.g., the Internet Archive versus YouTube's demonetization. Curatorial countercultures. The slow media movement. Podcasts like the Blindboy podcast are 99% invisible, prioritize long-form storytelling over clicks. Analog revival. Vinyl sales rise as listeners reject algorithmically shuffled playlists. Policy interventions. The EU's Digital Services Act forces transparency in algorithmic recommendations. Worker-owned platforms. Stocksy co-op stock photo site proves alternatives to Shutterstock's extractive model. In the end, the logical conclusion to allowing algorithmic control is cultural nihilism, a world where nothing feels real, because everything is optimized. The antidote isn't nostalgia, but rebuilding institutions, physical and digital, that prioritize human judgment over predictive analytics. The solution isn't a useless yearning for the past but can be found in reconstructing spaces where human judgment outweighs algorithmic logic. Ultimately, we must reject the illusion of choice offered by algorithms and rebuild systems that prioritize cultural depth over myopic dopamine.